that anybody who still thinks Dumbledore was white as his beard is in for a rude awakening. Let's just say that nobody hearing him rage against you-know-who would have dreamed that he dabbled in the dark arts himself in his youth. And for a wizard who spent his later years pleading for tolerance, he wasn't exactly broad-minded when he was younger. Yes, Albus Dumbledore had an extremely murky past, not to mention that very fishy family which he worked so hard to keep hushed up. I ask whether Skeeter is referring to Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth, whose conviction by the Wizengamot for misuse of magic caused a minor scandal 15 years ago. Oh, Aberforth is just the tip of the dung heap, laughed Skeeter. No, I'm talking about much worse than a brother with a fondness for fiddling about with goats. Worse even than the mother-naming father. Dumbledore couldn't keep either of them quiet anyway. They were both charged by the Wizengamot. Oh, it's the mother and the sister that intrigued me. And a little digging uncovered a positive nest of nastiness. But, as I say, you'll have to wait for chapters 9 to 12 for full details. All I can say now is, it's no wonder Dumbledore never talked about how his nose got broken. Family skeletons notwithstanding, does Skeeter deny the brilliance that led to Dumbledore's many magical discoveries? He had brains, she concedes, although many now question whether he could really take full credit for all of his supposed achievements. As I reveal in chapter 16, Ivor Dillsby claims he had already discovered 8 uses of dragon's blood when Dumbledore borrowed his papers. But the importance of some of Dumbledore's achievements cannot, I venture, be denied. What of his famous defeat of Grindelwald? Oh, now I'm glad you mentioned Grindelwald, says Skeeter with a tantalizing smile. I'm afraid those who go dewy-eyed over Dumbledore's spectacular victory must brace themselves for a bombshell, or perhaps a dung bomb. Very dirty business indeed. All I'll say is, don't be so sure that there really was the spectacular duel of legend. After they've read my book, people may be forced to conclude that Grindelwald simply conjured a white handkerchief from the end of his wand and came quietly. Skeeter refuses to give any more away on this intriguing subject, so we turn instead to the relationship that will undoubtedly fascinate her readers more than any other. Oh yes, says Skeeter, nodding briskly. I devote an entire chapter to the whole Potter-Dumbledore relationship. It's been called unhealthy, even sinister. Again, your readers will have to buy my book for the whole story, but there is no question that Dumbledore took an unnatural interest in Potter from the word go. Whether that was really in the boy's best interests, well, we'll see. It's certainly an open secret that Potter has had a most troubled adolescence. I ask whether Skeeter is still in touch with Harry Potter, whom she so famously interviewed last year. A breakthrough piece in which Potter spoke exclusively of his conviction that you-know-who had returned. Oh yes, we've developed a close bond, says Skeeter. Poor Potter has few real friends, and we met at one of the most testing moments of his life, the Tri-Wizard Tournament. I am probably one of the only people alive who can say that they know the real Harry Potter. Which leads us neatly to the many rumors still circulating about Dumbledore's final hours. Does Skeeter believe that Potter was there when Dumbledore died? Well, I don't want to say too much, it's all in the book. But eyewitnesses inside Hogwarts Castle saw Potter running away from the scene moments after Dumbledore fell, jumped, or was pushed. Potter later gave evidence against Severus Snape, a man against whom he has a notorious grudge. Is everything as it seems? That is for the wizarding community to decide, once they've read my book. On that intriguing note, I take my leave. There can be no doubt that Skeeter has quilled an instant bestseller. Dumbledore's legions of admirers, meanwhile, may well be trembling at what is soon to emerge about their hero. Harry reached the bottom of the article, but continued to stare blankly at the page. Revulsion and fury rose in him like vomit. He balled up the newspaper and threw it with all his force at the wall, where it joined the rest of the rubbish heaped around his overflowing bin. He began to stride blindly around the room, opening empty drawers and picking up books, only to replace them on the same piles, barely conscious of what he was doing, as random phrases from Rita's article echoed in his head. An entire chapter to the whole Potter-Dumbledore relationship. It's been called unhealthy, even sinister. He dabbled in the dark arts himself in his youth. I've had access to a source most journalists would swap their wands for. Lies! Harry bellowed, and through the window he saw the next-door neighbor, who had paused to restart his lawnmower, look up nervously. Harry sat down hard on the bed. The broken bit of mirror danced away from him. He picked it up and turned it over in his fingers, thinking of Dumbledore and the lies with which Rita Skeeter was defaming him. A flash of brightest blue. Harry froze, his cut finger slipping on the jagged edge of the mirror again. He had imagined it, he must have done. He glanced over his shoulder, but the wall was a sickly peach color of Aunt Petunia's choosing. There was nothing blue there for the mirror to reflect. He peered into the mirror fragment again, and saw nothing but his own bright green eye looking back at him. He had imagined it. There was no other explanation. Imagined it because he had been thinking of his dead headmaster. If anything was certain, it was that the bright blue eyes of Albus Dumbledore would never pierce him again. Chapter 3. The Dursleys Departing. The sound of the front door slamming echoed up the stairs, and a voice yelled, "Oi, you!" 16 years of being addressed thus left Harry in no doubt whom his uncle was calling. Nevertheless, he did not immediately respond. He was still gazing at the mirror fragment in which, for a split second, he had thought he saw Dumbledore's eye. It was not until his uncle bellowed, "Boy!" that Harry got slowly to his feet and headed for the bedroom door, pausing to add the piece of broken mirror to the rucksack filled with things he would be taking with him. "You took your time," roared Vernon Dursley when Harry appeared at the top of the stairs. "Get down here! I want a word!" Harry strolled downstairs, his hands deep in his jeans pockets. When he reached the living room, he found all three Dursleys. They were dressed for travelling. Uncle Vernon in a fawn zip-up jacket, Aunt Petunia in a neat salmon-coloured coat, and Dudley, Harry's large, blonde, muscular cousin, in his leather jacket. "Yes?" asked Harry. "Sit down," said Uncle Vernon. Harry raised his eyebrows. "Please," added Uncle Vernon, wincing slightly as though the word was sharp in his throat. Harry sat. He thought he knew what was coming. His uncle began to pace up and down, Aunt Petunia and Dudley following his movements with anxious expressions. Finally, his large purple face crumbled with concentration. Uncle Vernon stopped in front of Harry and spoke. "I've changed my mind," he said. "What a surprise," said Harry. "Don't you take that tone," began Aunt Petunia in a shrill voice, but Vernon Dursley waved her down. "It's all a lot of claptrap," glaring at Harry with piggy little eyes. "I've decided I don't believe a word of it. We're staying put. We're not going anywhere." Harry looked up at his uncle and felt a mixture of exasperation and amusement. Vernon Dursley had been changing his mind every 24 hours for the past 4 weeks, packing and unpacking and repacking the car with every change of heart. Harry's favourite moment had been the one when Uncle Vernon, unaware that Dudley had added his dumbbells to his case since the last time it had been unpacked, had attempted to hoist it back into the boot and collapsed with roars of pain and much swearing. "According to you," Vernon Dursley said now, resuming his pacing up and down the living room, "we, Petunia, Dudley and I, are in danger from some of my lot, right?" said Harry. "Well, I don't believe it," repeated Uncle Vernon, coming to a halt in front of Harry again. "I was awake half the night thinking it all over, and I believe it's a plot to get the house." "The house?" repeated Harry. "What house?" "This house," shrieked Uncle Vernon, the vein in his forehead starting to pulse. Our house! House prices are skyrocketing around here. You want us out of the way, and then you're going to do a bit of hocus pocus, and before we know it, the deeds will be in your name. And are you out of your mind? Demanded Harry. A plot to get this house? Are you actually as stupid as you look? Don't you dare! Squealed Aunt Petunia. But again Vernon waved her down. Slights on his personal appearance were, it seemed, as nothing to the danger he had spotted. Just in case you've forgotten, said Harry, I've already got a house. My godfather left me one, so why should I want this one? All the happy memories? There was silence. Harry thought he had rather impressed his uncle with this argument. You claim, said Uncle Vernon, starting to pace yet again, that this Lord thing, Voldemort, said Harry impatiently. And we've been through this about 100 times already. This isn't a claim, it's fact. Dumbledore told you last year, and Kingsley and Mr. Weasley. Vernon Dursley hunched his shoulders angrily, and Harry guessed that his uncle was attempting to ward off recollections of the unannounced visit, a few days into Harry's summer holidays, of two fully grown wizards. The arrival on the doorstep of Kingsley Shacklebolt and Arthur Weasley had come as a most unpleasant shock to the Dursleys. Harry had to admit, however, that as Mr. Weasley had once demolished half of the living room, his reappearance could not have been expected to delight Uncle Vernon. Kingsley and Mr. Weasley explained it all as well, Harry pressed on remorselessly. Once I'm 17, the protective charm that keeps me safe will break, and that exposes you as well as me. The Order is sure Voldemort will target you, whether to torture you to try and find out where I am, or because he thinks by holding you hostage, I'd come and try to rescue you. Uncle Vernon's and Harry's eyes met. Harry was sure that in that instant, they were both wondering the same thing. Then Uncle Vernon walked on, and Harry resumed. You've got to go into hiding, and the Order wants to help. You're being offered serious protection, the best there is. Uncle Vernon said nothing, but continued to pace up and down. Outside, the sun hung low over the privet hedges. The next-door neighbor's lawnmower stalled again. I thought there was a Ministry of Magic, asked Vernon Dursley abruptly. There is, said Harry, surprised. Well then, why can't they protect us? It seems to me that as innocent victims, guilty of nothing more than harbouring a marked man, we ought to qualify for government protection. Harry laughed. He could not help himself. It was so very typical of his uncle to put his hopes in the establishment, even within this world that he despised and mistrusted. You heard what Mr. Weasley and Kingsley said, Harry replied. We think the Ministry has been infiltrated. Uncle Vernon strode to the fireplace and back, breathing so heavily that his great black moustache rippled, his face still purple with concentration. All right, he said, stopping in front of Harry yet again. All right, let's say for the sake of argument we accept this protection. I still don't see why we can't have that Kingsley bloke. Harry managed not to roll his eyes, but with difficulty. This question had also been addressed half a dozen times. As I've told you, he said through gritted teeth, Kingsley is protecting the Muggle. I mean, your Prime Minister. Exactly. He's the best, said Uncle Vernon, pointing at the blank television screen. The Dursleys had spotted Kingsley on the news, walking along discreetly behind the Muggle Prime Minister as he visited a hospital. This, and the fact that Kingsley had mastered the knack of dressing like a Muggle, not to mention a certain reassuring something in his slow, deep voice, had caused the Dursleys to take to Kingsley in a way that they had certainly not done with any other wizard, although it was true that they had never seen him with his earring in. Well, he's taken, said Harry, but Hestia Jones and Daedalus Diggle are more than up to the job. If we'd ever seen CVs, began Uncle Vernon, but Harry lost patience. Getting to his feet, he advanced on his uncle, now pointing at the TV set himself. These accidents aren't accidents. The crashes and explosions and derailments and whatever else has happened since we last watched the news. People are disappearing and dying, and he's behind it. Voldemort. I've told you this over and over again. He kills muggles for fun. Even the fogs. They're caused by Dementors, and if you can't remember what they are, ask your son. Dudley's hands jerked upward to cover his mouth. With his parents and Harry's eyes upon him, he slowly lowered them again and asked, "There are more of them?" "More?" laughed Harry. "More than the two that attacked us, you mean?" "Of course there are. There are hundreds, maybe thousands by this time, seeing as they feed off fear and despair." All right, blustered Vernon Dursley. "You've made your point." "I hope so," said Harry, "because once I'm 17, all of them, Death Eaters, Dementors, maybe even Inferi, which means dead bodies enchanted by a dark wizard, will be able to find you and will certainly attack you. And if you remember the last time you tried to outrun wizards, I think you'll agree you need help." There was a brief silence in which the distant echo of Hagrid smashing down the wooden front door seemed to reverberate through the intervening years. Aunt Petunia was looking at Uncle Vernon. Dudley was staring at Harry. Finally, Uncle Vernon blurted out, "But what about my work? What about Dudley's school? I don't suppose those things matter to a bunch of layabout wizards." "Don't you understand?" shouted Harry. "They will torture and kill you like they did my parents." "Dad," said Dudley in a loud voice. "Dad, I'm going with these Order people." "Dudley," said Harry, "for the first time in your life, you're talking sense." He knew that the battle was won. If Dudley was frightened enough to accept the Order's help, his parents would accompany him. There could be no question of being separated from their Didikins. Harry glanced at the carriage clock on the mantelpiece. "They'll be here in about 5 minutes," he said, and when none of the Dursleys replied, he left the room. The prospect of parting, probably forever, from his aunt, uncle, and cousin was one that he was able to contemplate quite cheerfully, but there was nevertheless a certain awkwardness in the air. What did you say to one another at the end of 16 years' solid dislike? Back in his bedroom, Harry fiddled aimlessly with his rucksack, then poked a couple of owl nuts through the bars of Hedwig's cage. They fell with dull thuds to the bottom, crushing it more. "We're leaving soon, really soon," Harry told her, "and then you'll be able to fly again." The doorbell rang. Harry hesitated, then headed back out of his room and downstairs. It was too much to expect Hestia and Daedalus to cope with the Dursleys on their own. "Harry Potter!" squeaked an excited voice the moment Harry had opened the door. A small man in a mauve top hat was sweeping him a deep bow. "An honor, as ever." "Thanks, Daedalus," said Harry, bestowing a small and embarrassed smile upon the dark-haired Hestia. "It's really good of you to do this. They're through here, my aunt and uncle and cousin." "Good day to you, Harry Potter's relatives," said Daedalus happily, striding into the living room. The Dursleys did not look at all happy to be addressed thus. Harry half expected another change of mind. Dudley shrank nearer to his mother at the sight of the witch and wizard. "I see you are packed and ready. Excellent. The plan, as Harry has told you, is a simple one," said Daedalus, pulling an immense pocket watch out of his waistcoat and examining it. "We shall be leaving before Harry does. Due to the danger of using magic in your house, Harry, being still underage, it could provide the Ministry with an excuse to arrest him. We shall be driving, say, 10 miles or so before disapparating to the safe location we